this is an ideal place for people in Florida and around from Europe who love the sun and the real heat of the summer. And we have air conditioning, of course, in the rooms, and we have TV, and we have all the amenities that have been added through the years. And so the beach is just the same. And the clear water in the summer is unbelievable. We have a ledge which is out in front of, and you can see it in the clear weather and water, and it's glassy calm, and boats go by, and it is, but the beach is practically empty. It's your place. And at night, when the lights are on, you walk home and you can, underneath the oak trees, you can look up and see the sky and the stars. But around you, surrounding you, is all the greenery and the oaks and the planting, which is natural to Florida. This is a treasure which many people have never seen. Bob and I were looking for a place to build, or buy in Florida a resort, which would be a complement to his father's business in Rhode Island, and which was the Weekapaug Inn, and on the shores of Block Island Sound. And that was a summer inn with no heat or anything in it. It was a wonderful place for the summer. But then when Bob finished working there in the fall, we decided that we better have something else to do in the winter to carry us through. So we started to look in Florida. And in the course of it, we were at a cocktail party, and someone said, "Oh, Bob," he said, "you're looking for some property?" He said, "Have you heard about that nudist camp down there south of Venice?" Bob's eyes lit up and his ears popped. He said, "No, I haven't heard about that." So they told us where it was, and so the very next day, the children, Buff and Rob, who were old enough to go to school, we set off, and then left them in the day school, and headed down to below Venice to Manaosota Key, where the supposed nudist camp had been located. So eventually we came across a sign, and it said "for sale," and it said Manaosota Beach Club. So we drove in, and what did we see? Well, we saw the most beautiful place in the world. Beautiful oak trees and all sorts of wonderful vegetation. We saw this sort of ramshackle building, but that's okay. And we walked up, and there was the Gulf of Mexico. And we were high. We were about 10, 12 feet above sea level. And we looked out at this gorgeous view. Nobody on the beach. And having come from Siesta Key and seen all the hordes of people on the beach, we thought, "Oh my heaven, this is a paradise." So we went back and looked at the inn and looked it over. It was a little wooden ramshackle 2-story building. And so the for sale sign said Key Realty. So we went down the Key and asked about the price, and we were met by Mr. Dignam Sr., and he had the property on sale, and he explained it was someone who lived in New York, and they were putting it on the market, and they had owned it as a fishing camp for a few years. So he said, "I'll call up Mr. Clairville I'll call the stock market, New York stock market. I have his number. So we called up and we found out, yes, it was a possibility that we might be able to buy it. So that was the beginning.
I think it's a milestone, 55 years, it's a long time. And when I see the photographs, it's so nice to see all of them young and happy, and now 55 years later, old and happy, and still a beautiful, beautiful place. Mrs. Buffum called me, or I called her, I can't remember exactly, said, why don't you come over here? Because we have a lot of things to do that you can help us with. And when I came here, I actually took all the photographs. It was one of these days. It was so bright and clear and warm in the sunset that I couldn't help but make all photographs. And then I thought, wow, this is great to make a book of this. Because by now my graphic design talents or skills came back to the plate. And I learned on the computer to work with self-publishing companies, and I always have been writing blogs, and I thought, okay, let me write the story of the club. And then halfway everybody was too busy to help me out with what the story really was, and I thought, okay, then I write halfway my own story. So it's a little bit strange book in that sense, but the photographs are just, I mean, the glow is just totally amazing. So I was very happy to do this. This is such a remarkable place. And it never changed. And when I came here, it was summer. It was gray as could be. There was nothing. So I thought, I don't know, how am I going to do this? So in the summer, at this time it was closed during the summer. So I stayed in a cottage and I thought, I'm going to take on the challenge. But at 6 in the morning, it is very colorful here. It's gorgeous. At 7 at night, same thing, beautiful. And then I realized I have to be very specific when I can paint and bring the color to the cottages. So that's how I started. But I taught myself how to paint here. I had a stack of magazines, and I thought, you know, nature is my teacher. I'm going to study it and develop my own style in it. And you can see a little bit, the first paintings are now 20 years ago. That's a little bit different style than what I do now.
It's a special day today.
It's our 1-year anniversary.
And the best place to spend that special day?
Is the same place where we had our wedding.
The Manaosota Beach Club.
And I would just like to say thank you for being here. It's an honor to know you, and I hope I get to know you more over the coming years.
we started working, but we found, of course, that the water, there was no public water as there is today, so we had a well, which was fine, but it pumped up sulfurish type water, so you had to have a watering system where aeration took away the smell. And that worked fine, and the pump was, we found out was a well, and of course we had a telephone, but no other telephones around. Electricity, yes, it came on in the line, and there were several cottages which we could start right out for the first year in. So we had those all painted and scrubbed and did a lot of work on them and what we could before the season opened. And lo and behold, a lot of the older guests from the Weekapaug Inn decided to come down, and some of the younger ones too. So we had first year, had a very nice year, and we also met some wonderful people who had been here before. And the landlords actually put their mother-in-law and the two mother-in-laws stayed here, were our first guests.
And Buffy, I wanted to tell you, I was here to your 30th anniversary, and I'm still here to your 55th anniversary, and I wanted to tell you thank you so much for giving me the chance to work in, how I call it, the last paradise on earth. And I love it very much here, and thanks again, and happy anniversary. Cheers.
Join us at the Manaosota Beach Club Resort. Have an epic painting experience with me, Jacobina Trump, at the Manaosota Beach Club.
It was a great place to bring up children. The children loved it. They went off to school from here. We took them to the bus, the school bus, and they went down to Englewood Elementary. And Jim was still too little, so he was in a playpen, but everything was really wonderful. We had hired a secretary because I wasn't very proficient in typing, but I could greet the guests and check the rooms and be sure that everything was in order. So it was a wonderful business to be in with your husband and the family. We all grew up together, and we added things like the tennis court and the swimming pool, and we eventually, the water came up the key, and Bob was one of the ones who encouraged people. They said, well, we don't need water, we have our well. We said, wells are well, not too good sometimes, well, water doesn't come out. Water always comes up the key. So there were a lot of things that went along, and the road became paved, and people grumbled about that, but then it was much better than the others. And the friends that we've made over the years are incredible. It's a family resort, and that's what we always wanted it to be, just like the Weekapaug Inn, where people came back year after year and looked forward to seeing the same people and enjoying the same things. So we followed along in that vein, and so people came from Rhode Island, and from here in Florida they decided to try Weekapaug. So we had a very compatible business going back and forth.
I'm Jack Gray, and I want to give special thanks to everybody at the Manaosota Beach Club for making this just a fantastic place to be, and keeping the tradition alive for 55 years and counting. So we're going to run all the way to 60. Here we go, and we're going to have a lot more to go after that. So thank you very much, Sydney, Mrs. Buffum. You just do a fantastic job, and I'm glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Buffy took over down here for us, which was a blessing. So she's been doing this, and Jim was up there. So that's more or less brings us pretty much up to date. People who came here said, oh, they lived on the Key, can we play tennis here? And we had built a tennis court, and we said, of course, we'll start a club. So we started the Manaosota Beach Club, and all the people that were delighted because we served 3 meals a day. That meant they could make a reservation and come for dinner anytime they wanted, as long as we had room. And it developed that they became our rate boosters, and their friends would come down and stay at the beach club, and they heard about it and so forth. So it just grew.
had my back as an environmental warrior and as a place for sanctuary since I've known you, and that is a golden thing.
My early remembrance of this place was a marl road that would tear your tranny out, and also something they called water here, which was quite, if you pulled it out of a well, was putrid. So they had a system whereby you would buy a jug or jar of balm from the Zephyr Hills, I think it was. So once you got it, what you did is you would take it up to Nokomis and fill the damn thing, which was free. And I think probably Zephyr Hills never caught on. But at any rate, one final word. My father was given to putting signs places. His mother came down from Nova Scotia and had a brother up there who ran a smithy and the first petrol station in Bern. And he had a sign posted, "Going to lunch. If you can't read, ask the smitty." So Dad would copy all that stuff. And in our newly constructed bathroom in 1963, he had a sign with a pointer to the sink, a sign pointed to the toilet, and his advice was, drink here and sit here.
When Buffy suggested that I might speak to you all this evening, I wondered how to address a group of friends who knew far more about the club and the island than I did. And I'm just a newbie. I've only been here 3 years, but hopefully that tradition will continue for us. However, our family have been very good friends and neighbors with the Buffins for many years in westerly Rhode Island. And I thought maybe if I filled in a little history about Westerly, you might be interested, because there's a lot of Buffin up there. And then I'll kind of move on down to what I do know about this lovely spot. As a bit of history, Fred Cyrus Buffin built the Weekapaug Inn on the Barrier Beach in 1898. It was destroyed in the 1938 hurricane, and it was the hurricane, as many of you may remember, of the century. Remarkably, Fred Buffin, his son, replaced it in time for the 1939 season, which was no mean feat. Our family home looked across the bay at the new inn, which was certainly the highlight of the community. My first recollection of the Buffin family was going to Sunday community softball games with my dad. Those games were played between the married men and the single men. Bob Buffin was a single man, and my father obviously was a married man. Being 12 years old at the time, I was enthralled when Bob hit the dingers off the roof of the house in center field, and found myself in a difficult position of kind of rooting for those single guys. Never did tell my father that. But my loyalties were certainly tested. And then, if some divine intervention or something of that sort occurred, along came Sid. And not long before long, Bob switched teams. Needless to say, that solved my inner conflict. And that was quite a relief. Bob and Sid were a team to be reckoned with as they set out to find a place in Florida that could be a refuge from the cold New England winters for friends and guests. After an extensive 2-year search, they landed on Manaosota Key and found on this very spot where you're sitting a nudist colony. Bob decided to stay, and the rest is history. Their son Jim joined them for a few years in the mid-90s and then returned to Rhode Island to run the Weekapaug Inn. Buffy joined the team in 2004 and now, as you know, manages the facility. She's a staunch conservationist with degrees in biology and environmental education. Unfortunately, when I have a difficult enough time getting my words out, but I haven't had anything to drink, so I don't have a glass to toast, to offer such a toast, but pretend it's in my hand, as this is such a unique and special place, unspoiled and natural. May the next 55 years continue to receive the same kind of loving care as the Buffum family has provided for the last half century.
Hi. 14 years ago, I was the pro at Jack Randall West Country Club. And I got a phone call from a gentleman who's the manager of the Manaosota Beach Club, Ronnie Francis. And he asked me if I'd be interested in coming over to the beach club as a pro. Well, let me explain. I had a house on Alamander Avenue, just over on the other side of the bridge. And I used to run by here every morning. And I would be running along, and I'd see this small sign saying Manaosota Beach Club, and I thought, must be a couple of cabanas, and whatever they do there. So I was very enchanted by his offer. I said, well, Waddy, I'll come over and talk to you, because I've never thought that if anyone had the good faith to call me and offer me a job, one rule is I'll always talk to you. I came over, and he gave me directions to his house. Of course, the place was empty at the time. It was middle of the summer, and I pulled up to his house, knocked on the door, and a gorgeous girl in a bikini opened the door. It was Jilly, his wife. And I can remember thinking, wow, this is a great place to come. Jilly sent me to Waddy. He was in one of the pools with his daughters, and I found him, and we proceeded to have a nice talk and toured the grounds, and I was amazed at what was here. As we talked some more, we made a good deal, and I decided to join the beach club and leave Jacaranda. That was 14 years ago, which is a long time. So I came to the beach club at that time, and was just taken with the place. Now, at the time, we had a very small membership, and a lot of guests who would stay here would take lessons. I said to Waddy, geez, I've got to be able to take outside people, and I'll cater to your members and the innkeepers and in the residents, as we call them. But I've got to take that membership outside. And he said, okay, if you just give priority to our members. And I did. And a few years later, we hardly had any outside people because the membership was so active. And it had grown so much. And we had a pretty good following from the inn as well. It's taken me a long time to realize what the beach club is all about. I'm going to share a story with you. I went to a memorial back in, I think, January for Frank Clement, a longtime member, a good participant in everything we had. And I was sitting there with my wife, and I had never been to the church. I did not know the priest, but looking at the people, and I saw amazing that everyone was a member of the beach club. About 90%, I'd say. And I think that's a fair percentage. And I thought to myself, I don't know if these people realize it, but everyone here has met their friends at the beach club. And I just sat back and thought, wow, that's a tremendous statement to be made. And I really think that's what the beach club is all about.
We're delighted to have you all here for our 55th year and wish to thank you all for coming. It is such a fine tribute, really, from everyone. It is hard to know how best to respond. However, we do want everyone to know that the real visionary behind our beach club has always been Bob Buffalo, husband for 59 years, father of Buff, Rob Jr., and Jim, a good friend to all our Manaosota Beach Club members and guests. Devoted to our devoted staff and local businesses and the church and the Englewood organizations. It was his far-sighted vision, wisdom, graciousness, and humor, along with his harmonica, which we all remember so well, and which brings us all together again today. Again, thanks for coming, and now I'm going to give the mic to Buff, who is the one who is most responsible for carrying on Bob's vision into the future.
Okay, it's hard to believe that in 1960, I wasn't born yet. No, just kidding. Mom and Dad we came down, found and bought the Manaosota Beach Club. 1961 was our first season. We came down a windy, sandy trail to a small sign and found the canopy of oaks, historic buildings, a clubhouse, a few cottages, and that was the beginning of the adventure. Well, went to school by boat, when they were building the bridges, swimming in the Gulf of Mexico, looking for coquinas. When Mom and Dad wanted to take a break, they said, we're going to make coquina soup tonight. They sent the kids out, and if you know, coquinas are pretty little, so it took us a long time to make coquina soup. We met lots of friends and families. My cousins came down from Milwaukee, and we spent many a fun time as children and teenagers, and that was when the Manaosota Beach Club Children's Program started. So we had to think of fun things to do. So growing up on Lemon Bay and Englewood, went to the out-of-door school, helped actually later on, went off to college and worked in New York City and Mystic, Connecticut, and decided the best place to be would be to come back to Manaosota Key and be nearby. So I was instrumental in helping the American Littoral Society, which branched off to become the Coastal Wildlife Club. I was past president of the Lemon Bay Conservancy, and all these things which were wonderful organizations, and we want to continue to support them. Then I had the opportunity to actually run the Manaosota Beach Club and help preserve the native wildlife and help continue to educate the children about the importance of the wildlife and the gopher tortoises. If you ever come here, you'll see all that. And we have generations of family that come. And I was fortunate to have my daughter, and we'll get married and have my daughter here and have her grandparents nearby, which is a wonderful thing. And now I'm going to be a grandparent. But unfortunately she's in Philadelphia, so. But such a joy, such beautiful place, and it's really a great challenge to continue the tradition of our Quaker heritage of hospitality and using biology and environmental background to help preserve this piece of old Florida, natural habitats and history, and to create a place for families to come on vacations, renew their souls, and be able to return year after year. And we do have a guest here. I don't know if you saw the little baby, that's 4th generation that have been coming here. And I also want to mention the staff. I have 3 generations. Christina's daughter is working here, and her mother-in-law worked here. So we're a place where we want people to come and remember and be a part of this wonderful place. So we want to thank you for coming, but really you are the ones that make this wonderful, and we really appreciate it. So we want to remember that you are part of the fabric that will hold this dream together and deliver it into the future. And so welcome aboard. It's just the beginning. Hear, hear. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.